You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 394 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer. I'll be your host, joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin, and he's on the road tonight. How's it going, Pat?
I'm literally on a road. I'm in a parking lot. I don't know if that counts as a road, but yes, it's great that we are having a podcast tonight because that is a sign that things went well.
They couldn't have gone any better. We will recap.
Actually, they could have, but they went well enough. So
yes, we will recap the wild card series against the Padres. We're going to preview the division series on an express episode here. This is going to be quick because for some of our new listeners who haven't been around while we do the playoffs, we pop in and do a show, and it's a quick express show, and then we'll be back a couple days later to do another show. And so to keep with that theme and that pattern of playoff coverage, we're going to have an express episode today to help us unpack the wild card series and preview the division series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Longtime friend of the show. You know him from his work at Northside Baseball. Matt Trueblood, thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Of course. I am in my childhood bedroom, which means I am deep behind enemy lines in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Wow, and excellent.
It smells like war, fellas.
Don't worry, Matt. You still get full credit for a full episd as a guest,
Okay.
even though it's an
That's
express.
a relief. I really only do this to pad my stats now.
Yeah, right.
The Cubs closed out the month of September by defeating the San Diego Padres in Game 1 of the Wild Card Series. Crucial Game 1. They won 3-1. That was Matthew Boyd pitching for the Cubs. That was a great pitching performance from the returning Palencia. Great to see him. And Keller closing it out. The Cubs defeating Pivetta thanks to the home runs from it was playoff baseball. I had forgotten how stressful it is, and man, the relief of like getting a couple of runs, and it's like, oh, here we go, and being in a position with the lead really made a difference. Pat,
You find it stressful when I say, oh yeah, well the bullpen's got to get 14 straight outs without giving up any runs here. Is that stressful to you? Not me.
Not this bullpen.
No.
Matt, your thoughts on the opener, and then we'll and kind of your overall series thoughts as we roll into the closer.
Yeah, I mean, mainly from that first game, Boyd pitched really well, and I think Craig's going to have this very quick hook. It is how he manages games of high importance, playoff games. It makes me uneasy. Like, I'm all for the quick hook on the starter. We know that's the analytical trend. He's always going a couple of batters before I feel like I would. But hey, it worked because Daniel Palencia is a monster.
Yes.
And then just my favorite thing about playoff baseball is the adrenaline that flows through guys and makes them do things that they're not capable of the rest of the time. It's how Freddie Fermin nearly wrecks your season, right? Which is a problem. But it's also how Carson Kelly, for the first time all year, for the first time in 14, 15 months, actually goes and gets a fastball at the very top of the strike zone and hits it out of the park. He never does that. That's not part of his game. And then it was, and that was the game winner in a playoff game, because when there's that much energy in the park, you're capable of stuff you're not usually capable of. Now, sometimes you get outside yourself and you make mistakes that way, but other times it's magic, and it was magic this week.
So how diabolical is Carson Kelly to have that skill set the entire year, but to wait and then sandbag us with it in the playoffs in Game 1? That's
really
amazing.
and truly is adrenaline, man. And I love that we have numbers for this now. I know a lot of people would be like, I don't want to put numbers on it. That ruins it. But to me, it brings it out. When I can tell you that the average bat speed of a guy goes up a mile an hour when they get to the playoffs, it's not because they've been holding back the whole time. They don't know that's in there. But the extra adrenaline of 40,000 and your terror that your season might be about to end.
Then all of a sudden you can lift a car.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to be able to say, we don't have to wonder whether that's really what's happening. We have science now that says guys get in these huge situations and they can do stuff they can't usually do. And I think that's so cool, especially when it breaks the way of your team.
We're sort of used to people choking in those situations. So
which is another thing that adrenaline can make you do. But
yeah,
I think big credit too to the team that Jed Hoyer put together, the manager that he put in charge of it. This is a slow heartbeat team. This is a team that knows how to use that adrenaline for a positive most of the time. It's not always going to be. It can't always be because the other team's trying really hard and is capable of things they're not usually capable of too. But it really, I mean, we saw Brad Keller totally lose it. That's an example of that adrenaline getting to you, and suddenly your changeup, you can't feel it in your hand, you know? But
so in a 3-game series like this, Matt, where adrenaline matters, where things happen out of the ordinary, where frankly, we've talked about this and in the history bears it out, like all kinds of weird stuff can happen. Anybody can win a 3-game series. Anybody can also win a 5-game series, but at least in a 5-game series, it feels like it's a little bit less arbitrary, even just by a smidge, right?
Yep.
So I guess my question is, and we all have PTSD from Game 7 of the World Series in 2016 when we're like, why are you taking out Hendricks? Why are you taking out Lester? Like, why aren't you leaving these guys in? And then running out of pitchers and having to rely on your closer to, do improbable things. And then, of course, nothing like bringing in C.J. Edwards to close out the World Series for you. But and then after that, bring in yet another pitcher to close out the World Series for you, who's not even a relief pitcher. So in a 5-game series, do you go a little bit longer with your starters?
In this 5-game series. So this is, and Jeremy, I don't want to take us all the way into the, talking Cubs Brewers before we put Cubs Padres to bed. So we can.
I guess what I should say then, let me rephrase the question. Did you feel the same way when they pulled Taillon? Do you feel like, was that like an inning too soon? Or did you say, you know what, he's been through the order now, let's get him out before he gives up something, because these games are going to be low scoring. It's Game 3. Everything's on the line. There is no next game. So just throw it all out there.
Even more than with Boyd, I would have, whereas Boyd, I might have said, let me get the 2 more outs to the end of the inning. With Taillon, I would have gone another full inning. But it really is, it's just not how Craig's going to manage games like this. He never has. And so, yeah, I would have left Taillon in longer. And I think that was kind of borne out by what happened over the rest of the game, because you saw, especially in that second inning, for Keller, things really started to go off the rails. But
and in the second inning of the entire game, the Cubs scored an extra 2 runs when they had bases loaded, nobody out, and actually had, instead of a 2-0 lead or a 3-0 lead, if they'd had a 5-0 lead or a 6-0 lead, then I bet he does leave Taillon in for another inning, because you've got a little bit more wiggle room,
Yeah. Yeah. And because at this early stage of the playoffs, you have to manage to advance, right? You can't think too much about the next game when it's win or go home. But if you get to that 5-run lead, you can start thinking, I do want to not burn everything out to get from here to out 27 if I don't have to, because I got a tough series waiting in 48 hours or less, actually. Right. So I think if the cushion was bigger, he would have waited longer. I probably would have waited longer anyway, but ultimately, his decision was borne out. He made the right one, at least as far as we can tell from the results.
He had an interesting decision for Game 2 when he brought Kittredge back after pitching in Game 1 to be the opener for sure.
Yeah, usually the guy who gets the save in the first game doesn't start the second game. That seems very 1890s to me, but go ahead.
Well, his beard seems very 1890s too. So
yes, right, he fits right in.
And then having so Kittredge in there, they double steal, results in a run. And that was the difference in the game. And then Shota gives up a couple runs when he's in, but the Cubs offense had nothing as the Padres also went to their bullpen real quick. Dylan Cease only 3 2/3 before going to their bullpen, which, man, Miller is nasty. And it just a no-win situation there. But your thoughts on the strategy for Craig Counsell on Game 2?
I liked it. I think there are a couple of things that went into it that I might have given me pause, which is like for Machado, it was basically back-to-back at-bats for him, separated from one day to the next, but back-to-back at-bats were against Andrew Kittredge. So you lose some of that advantage that you have from here. You saw one kind of pitcher the whole game, and now Andrew Kittredge comes in, and that's who you're facing. Well, it was back-to-back at-bats for him. So that saps some of the advantage you're supposed to have over that guy in that spot. And that may have shown up a bit, the way it worked out. You were having him face the same pocket of the order. Unless things went perfectly, you were having him face the same pocket of the order that he had faced the day before. And, he was the first one facing him again. So that's a wrinkle that happens in the playoffs that you do have to consider. You don't want to overexpose your relievers to the same guys in the opposing lineup. Or that gets even more important, by the way, over the course of a longer series. But I liked the idea of, especially you've got a game up on the Padres. So you're going to start with Kittredge. That buys you an inning. And then you have more information to work with and more margin for error over the rest of the game to kind of win the pitching race from here to the end of the series. And we did see that show up a bit because, yes, the Padres won that game, but Shota ate a few innings for you. And then you knew what you were doing in the back half of that game. You didn't burn out your high leverage guys to close that out. And on the other hand, Schilt ran that gambit of, I'm going to issue that intentional walk and remove Cease and need 16 outs today just to get to tomorrow. He almost lost the series right there, even though he won the game. I didn't think it was necessarily a bad gambit, but it was certainly, he was paying a big cost for that upfront, increase in odds for Game 2. Game 3 was going to be a lot harder once he did that, and we saw that borne out.
What we also saw in Game 3 was.
Oh, can we finish one more thing about Game 2 just real quick?
Oh, I was there. I don't want no.
Well, here's the thing, and this is for all the armchair quarterbacks out there. We talk about, they should have left Tyon in for another inning, or maybe Boyd for another batter. Maybe they left Shota in one batter too long, right? Because it's just it's so much easier after the fact to say what should have been done or not have been done. When you have the rearview mirror of saying, well, with 2 outs, they gave up a home run. I guess we should have taken them out, right? It's easy to be indignant about it after the fact, but so I don't want to sound like we're giving Counsell too much blame for any of this stuff. I mean, he's there. He knows he has a better sense of how much gas the pitchers have left in him and what's going on and what his plans are. So I don't want to. I just caveat footnote. I don't want to say that he mismanaged the series in any way because obviously we saw the results. So
in the Northside Baseball Slack, folks were pretty divided. We had some who were in favor of removing Shota right there and going to the righty, probably Soroka, I guess, against Machado. The other camp was intentionally walk Machado and go after Merrill instead. Almost no one wanted him to actually just pitch to Machado.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think there were 2 different paths that they could have taken instead of the one they did. I'll also
especially when you're already losing 1-0, the intentional walk doesn't feel as bad as if you had a lead that you're protecting.
For sure. But again, and then also because you're losing 1-0, I understand why you wouldn't pull the trigger on lifting Shota at that point. The intentional walk might have been more appealing to me.
I feel you go intentional walk and then strike out Merrill. That would have been what I would have done.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Let the strikeout play really as often as you can.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. To me, I just needed Shota to run the strikeout play on that. It was only his second time facing Machado in the game because of the opener. He just had to execute that pitch better. It was not a good pitch. And obviously, as you go deeper into a game, you're more likely to misexecute a given pitch. That's part of the fatigue. That's why we talk about getting guys out earlier. But I didn't think he was worn down. I think he made a mistake. Time and probably a future Hall of Famer took advantage of that. So sometimes you got to just tip your cap to the other guy too.
And it's a mistake he's made, throughout the second half of the year. So it wasn't unexpected,
Yeah. Offensively, game 3, we saw Pete Crow Armstrong emerge after not having any hits, coming up 3 for 4 in that game. Michael Busch staying hot as he's been. So great to see that. Even Ian Happ got his first hit of the wild card series. He got a double, but the Happ batting third, just when that lineup came out for the game 3, I'm just like, man, it is so hard when you've got Happ and Tucker really not doing a lot at 3 and 4. That in those first 2 games, it was really it was a stretch to see him there again, and then so we had those positives in the offense, but the story, of course, was Dansby Swanson and his glove on defense. Matt, go ahead, Pat.
I was just going to say, it is a little bit unusual to have a 3-hitter whose number one offensive quality is drawing walks.
It's a little backward, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Sorry. Go ahead, Matt. Tell us about the game.
I agree that it's a little awkward. I think Craig's been put in an awkward position because over the last 2 months, he's gotten all these very mixed signals about where guys are and what they're capable of. And obviously even availability was a big question with Tucker for a long time there. I don't have a major problem with the way the lineup was structured. I think we may see it start to change now. Probably not, though, because Nico's been so good. Do you really want to take him out of the top of the order there? You'll probably still go Busch and Horner. Maybe you slide Tucker up to 3 and Suzuki to 4 and drop Happ to 5. But maybe you feel like that's not even necessary, and you assume keep him in there to diffuse any platoon things that the other team wants to try.
The problem with this lineup and the construction of this lineup, and feels like it's been this way for a couple of years, I'm sure every team feels this way, is that the guy who should be hitting 5th is Moises Ballesteros, but he has no place to play in the field. So we're kind of stuck with this situation, right? Because Seiya needs to be the DH and needs to be in the game. And Ballesteros, certainly against the Brewers, you're not going to catch him. I don't think you would have caught him in this series either. So he just has nowhere to go. But gosh, if they could get that bat, if there's a DH, that's sort of what this lineup really could use right now. If he and Happ could split offensive and defensive responsibilities, then that would be perfect because they're just missing. I mean, this is a thin lineup right now. It sure feels like, right, as you get further down. We're talking about
the way Matt Shaw's playing too. That's brilliant.
Do they even have a 5-hitter, right? Yeah, and then Shaw looked on a couple of strikeouts. He looked a lot. I mean, he made Javi Baez blush on one of those at bats where 3 pitches that were nowhere near the strike zone, and he's flailing away. It's I hope he can regain, his season form.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, he's not even swinging at the pitches that he should be swinging at when it's one thing to be
swinging at pitches that are 2 feet outside off the plate. I mean, you can't do that.
Well, and pitches that are basically over his head when he's not a high ball hitter right now. That's not where he had a bunch of success. To start
Carson Kelly told him that in the playoffs you could be a high ball hitter, and that's where he got confused.
I didn't get in his ear with that. I don't think Matt Shaw listens to me on most issues, actually. But I will say, if Tucker were healthy enough to play the outfield, you'd have a few more options. And I think it'll be interesting. Here's something they are not going to do, but I really believe they should do. And maybe, even though it won't happen in game 1, we'll see how things go, and maybe it's an option by game 4. If you could play Tucker in right against Freddie Peralta against whom Seiya Suzuki is 3 for 23 with 12 strikeouts in his career, because he's a disaster against what Peralta does well. But what Peralta does well is that flat fastball at the top of the strike zone, and Ballesteros kills that.
Yeah.
If you could put Tucker in the outfield, as difficult as it might be to sell ego-wise, you should really bench Seiya against Freddie Peralta and put in Ballesteros as the DH. That's problematic on multiple levels right now. I wouldn't expect to see it in game 1, but we'll see where things are in game 4. I wouldn't be shocked if that kind of possibility creeps closer to the horizon for Counsell, because he's aware of those things. It's just there's a political issue and there's a logistical issue.
And that's right, because this is where we get into the matchup stuff, where you see where you have these clear matchup situations. And, if this were the regular season, you'd say, I was giving him a day off. Right. But in the playoffs, Seiya's like, no, dude, you can't not play me in the first game of the playoff series. What are you talking about, right? I mean, it's a little, like you said, it's a little more political. And yet, what a big difference that can make, too, It doesn't mean Seiya can't come in the game later on,
Right. And honestly,
maybe pinch hit for somebody.
That's also the thing about baseball, and the reason why this decision is probably not even keeping Craig Counsell up tonight, is that Seiya has this disastrous track record against Peralta. He really doesn't match up well with what Peralta throws, and yet Peralta could make a mistake, and we've seen how Seiya's hitting right now. He could launch one tomorrow, so
right.
It's probably not even worth risking whatever fracture that creates in a relationship. Because Ballesteros doesn't have the status to demand that playing time in his own right.
Not quite yet. No.
Yeah.
Boyd and Peralta are your game 1 starting pitching matchups.
Are you surprised that they went to Boyd on short rest? Or I thought they would go Assad, Colin Ray, or something like that. I'm surprised they went. Now, I guess I should backtrack a little bit and say there are 3 off days during this series if it were to go to 5 games, which is a lot. So I felt that they would have been able to pitch Boyd in basically on Monday, with plenty of rest, and then they still could have pitched him in game 5, which would have been on Saturday of next week? Yeah, next Saturday.
Yeah, this is at its longest, it could be a 5-game, 8-day series, which is so weird.
It just feels like it's is it a little desperate to push Boyd, or is it just because that A, Boyd only pitched 4 innings last time, and B, maybe you're only going to have him pitch 4 or 5 innings. You're not going to ask him to throw 90 pitches, so you're like, whatever, we can throw him more often, throw him in game 4, and I don't know. I guess that must be it, right? Like the expectations are lower.
It's absolutely it. I mean, he only threw 58 pitches in game 1.
Yeah.
So
right.
It had crossed my mind that, maybe you just bring him back on 3 days, because it's 58 pitches, and you're probably, especially since the Brewers are one of the teams who started to crack Boyd's code first out of the whole season. His first bad start really was in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to recognize his pitches out of the hand. Hard to adjust to where they are if you're in swing mode already. Ignition doesn't necessarily help you. But if you're a team like the Brewers who loves to wait, to draw walks, to all of that, they're able to recognize it, and they're just going to not swing if it's not the pitch that they're sitting on. So
it'd be great if he could throw more strikes right on the edge of the strike zone.
Absolutely. Run that play, man. Just do that. But I do think he threw 58 pitches last time. He's probably going to be out within 60 to 70 pitches this time. Matthew Boyd, they haven't pushed him past 90 pitches at all since April. So it crossed my mind that they would do this. And then when he was warming up in game 3, I was like, okay, they've gone a different direction. They wanted him to be ready to juice this up tonight. That means they won't have him. But ultimately, I think because he didn't come in, maybe he didn't ramp all the way up. They said that effectively worked as a bullpen session for him.
And now that we know Cade Horton is not playing in the series, sadly, the question is, if he does go short innings, you could piggyback him with Assad or Colin Ray or somebody, and do that. And because of the days off, you're going to be able to have Shota and Tyon pitch on full rest.
Yeah.
Both of them. Full rest.
I mean,
in games 2 and 3.
Tyon will pitch game 3 on Wednesday, which will be 5 days rest after only throwing 60 pitches. I mean, he's he's available for a full-length start in game 3, which means you can, with 2 lefty starters that you want to start in Boyd and Imanaga, you're also going to have 2 ideally primed right-handed piggyback guys who look very different in terms of what they're throwing at you than Boyd and Imanaga and Ray and Assad. I'd be fairly shocked if it basically wasn't a 1-2 punch each night. Here, Brewers, here's the line, here's the guy you're facing, but after 1.5 times through, whenever the matchup appeals to Craig most, boom, now we go from lefty to righty.
So here's 4 innings of Boyd, and here's 2 innings of Assad, or 4 1/3 and 2 1/3 or whatever, and before you know it, you're getting closer to the 8th and 9th innings.
Yep. And then you probably skip over some of the lefties who were, Pomerantz and Thielbar were very important in your game plan for the Padres. Less so for the Brewers. Just A, because the Brewers lefty batters hit lefties better than the Padres lefty batters do. And B, because more of the guys you're going to worry about up and down the Brewers order are right-handed. So you'd like to leave them out a little bit, not have them as a primary part of your pitching plan. You're going to start with Boyd. You're going to start with Imanaga. You're going to go to Ray and Assad in whichever order of games. And then the back end, you may have a matchup lefty, but you really want to focus on Palencia, Keller, Kittredge.
Dare I say, does that mean you swap Rogers off the roster for like Wicks or something like that?
I don't think they trust Jordan Wicks as far as they can throw him.
No, he can't be thrown very far.
Right. No, he's sturdy. He's thick.
And two innings of scoreless, or 3 innings of scoreless relief against the Cardinals in the last game of the season doesn't count. But
no, it does not count. No.
So you go with the extra lefties. But here's the other thing. If you have another pitcher, because Assad's going to have to be added to the roster. He wasn't on the roster for the last series. So that means then that if you keep Rogers, you have to remove an offensive player. So now you're talking about getting rid of either Justin Turner or Alcantara. I like having another guy who could play center field in an emergency, or especially if worst case scenario, and I know nobody wants to do this, but in the 8th inning of a game where you have to win it against a tough left-handed pitcher, do you want PCA at the plate? I don't. Sorry. I'd rather, use somebody else.
Neither do I, but Craig hasn't shown us very much willingness to. I mean, he did that once this year, once.
Down 2-1.
Absolute nadir.
Yeah.
Like only at his very, very worst in a stretch over which he was the worst hitter in the league. Only when he was his worst self within that did Craig pinch hit for him one time. So I just don't think that's
9th inning.
I wish that was a more relevant consideration, but it doesn't feel like it is one.
Okay.
I think they'll probably just take Rogers off, put Assad on. You want more length over a 5-game series, even with the days off built in. And it's just not as important to have a third lefty in the pen.
And then you just leave Turner on as well, on the roster as well, even though he's not going to play a single inning or
ideally
bad at all.
Craig has shown us plenty of times that he'll pinch hit for Michael Bush, just not for.
Yes,
right.
Yes, he sure will. Last question for me, Matt, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll be back next week. But tell us about the current status of this Brewers team going into this best of 5 series here. We touched on the pitching briefly, but tell us about the lineup and about some of the roster moves that the Cubs can expect here.
And are there any injuries other than the ones that we know about with Woodruff and Katana?
No, those are the main storylines. Those two plus Trevor McGill will be on the roster. He pitched in the last game of the regular season, and the stuff was down. Like his fastball was 2 ticks off its season average.
Almost like he was still on the Cubs.
It's, yes, honestly, that's what Trevor McGill looked like then. Although with the Brewers, he has command. But McGill will be on the roster. I don't think they'll have him back into like that closer job. I could be wrong about that. I don't know for sure, but it feels like he'll have to show them that he can get back to 100, that he can, because the stuff that he threw, it was just one inning on Sunday. It was fairly crisp. The stuff was moving, but it wasn't at that caliber where it's going to overwhelm you. I think they'll be a little wary of that. I think they'll probably have him on the roster, but still have Abner Uribe at the back end of the pen running things. First two starters will be Peralta and Priester. I'm pretty sure Quintana's healthy enough that they're going to go with him for game 3. Jacob Misiorowski is going to be on the roster, but I think they're kind of viewing him as one inning righty reliever at a unpredictable time of need.
How the mighty have fallen. 1 minute he's an all-star for the National League. The next minute, he can't even start a playoff game. Gosh.
All the way coming up through the minors, he had these significant command issues. And then he just seemed to have kind of resolved them early this year, even in the minors, but especially once he came to the majors. Not that he wasn't walking people or capable of walking people at least, but just that he was able to rein it in and he was able to overwhelm guys.
Maybe rule of thumb for the future is don't have somebody on the all-star team as a starting pitcher who's only pitched 15 innings in the majors.
This is definitely going to shoot that one in the foot, which is probably for the best. I think they were feeling.
They should have given it to one of the actual deserving candidates, maybe instead. Yeah, gotcha.
Schemes worked out so well that they thought, let's push this even farther. And I do think, I don't know that Misiorowski has just gone completely, off the rails and won't come back. But I think what everyone thought was sort of a phantom IL stint right at and after the trade deadline, where someone on the Cubs hit him with a comebacker, and then he had like a calf strain or a shin contusion. It was lower leg something. Well, he missed 2 or 3 weeks, and I think it's turned out that was an actual injury, and it was a little more destabilizing than people expected. This is a really high maintenance delivery. I mean, still a relatively thin dude. Stuff is crazy. Anyway, they're probably going to have him as that guy who comes in the 5th inning when you think, I don't know how we're going to get from here to the end of the game, but we need 1 inning where they just can't touch us. They're going to try.
So he hits the first batter and then walks the next guy in 4 pitches.
Could completely backfire. It absolutely could. But they're rolling that dice. He's going to be on the roster. I don't think Pat Murphy trusts him very much, but he may not have any choice but to use him in a relatively high leverage situation, because every moment in the playoffs is a relatively high leverage situation. The last lingering injury thing to talk about is William Contreras got hit in the hand on a swing. It was a catcher interference about a week before the end of the season. He's been nursing a significant contusion kind of right here on the outer edge of the wrist where it meets the bottom part of the hand ever since. It hasn't wrecked his swing. He kept playing because he's William Contreras and you have to amputate things to get him off the field. And he will keep playing in this series, but that's a relevant consideration. You may get to a point where Bryce Terang is up and first base is open and you got a righty on the mound. I wouldn't be shocked if the play is intentionally walk Terang, because we got a better chance of getting Contreras out. He always seems to play himself into this compromised state because he refuses to take days off. He plays through so many injuries. By the end of the season, he is worn down and beaten up in a way that you just can't play your best ball. We saw it last year in the Brewers playoff series against the Mets. I think that could happen again this year, so keep an eye on that. But otherwise, it's a lot of the same story as this Cubs team, where there were a lot of guys who were great for long season and then went into significant slumps near the end of the year that are making it a little bit hard for Murphy to tell how much to trust each hitter and where to slot people in. He's even got a couple of difficult start-sit decisions between Isaac Collins and Blake Perkins in the outfield, between Andrew Monasterio and Joey Ortiz at shortstop. We might see Monasterio start behind Peralta in game 1 because Peralta is more of a fly ball pitcher and Ortiz's defense is better, but his bat is worse. And then in game 2, Priester, ground ball guy, you might see Ortiz out there instead of Monasterio. It's much more mix and match than the Padres, who literally ran out the same lineup 3 games in a row against the Cubs. It's a whole different beast. This series is going to be much, much different and even more fun. But ultimately, it's a a winnable series for the Cubs, just like the last one was.
Looks like Yelich is back on the juice. I mean, orange juice, of course.
Well, looking forward to the atmosphere, both in Milwaukee and here in Chicago. It's going to be a heck of a series. Matt, thanks for taking time to help us preview it, and make sure that you remind all of our listeners how they can find your work on the internet.
I'm just going to become a goblin. If you guys want to do a show with me again in a few days, it'll be great, but my visage will have changed considerably, even between now and then. It's Cubs Brewers. I grew up a Cubs fan here in Northeast Wisconsin. I run northsidebaseball.com. Got tons of coverage coming for this series.
Great to subscribe to that, because they'll send it to you in your email. A lot of interesting stories. Yeah.
We've got game threads for every game that have been, I think we got to close to 1,000 comments during game 3 against the Padres. Like, people just fly in. And you don't get as much of that experience on social media anymore. So if you missed that, just talking the game.
Yeah.
Jump in, join us. It's free to set up an account, and then you can comment on articles. You can be in those threads. It's a great time. Also, if you want more on the other side, I also run brewerfanatic.com. And we have a dedicated beat writer who is at the field in Milwaukee. I call it Euchre Field, but anyway, whatever you want to call it.
We call it Wrigleyville North.
I know you do. I know. But we have a beat writer who is there 81 games a year. We have just a really high level of coverage of the Brewers. We're probably a year more matured on that site. It's been around as, under our control longer than Northside. So there's a lot going on there too. We're going to have wall-to-wall coverage from both sides. Again, I'm going to completely run myself into the ground, but it's worth it. This is my World Series.
This is it right here.
Yeah, it really is.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Oh, by the way, can we get a prediction for you for the series while we're at it?
Well, I suppose. I said before the playoffs started, the Cubs would beat the Padres, and then the Brewers would take down the Cubs in 4. And it's like sitting in my stomach thinking of the Brewers beating the Cubs again at Wrigley to end their season. I know that wouldn't be good at all.
On Jeremy's birthday, no less.
That's right.
Man, sorry. I think I got to stick with that. But it's going to be a really hard-fought series. Neither outcome would surprise me. That's how the playoffs work, and it's certainly how these two teams work. I do think this might be the Brewers' year. This is a legitimately amazing team that people took too long to take seriously. And their run, I don't think their run's going to stop right where it starts this time around.
Jeremy, what's your prediction? Then I'll give you guys the truth.
Cubs in 5. They're going to win game 5. It's going to be crazy back and forth. It's going to just come down to randomness and weirdness, and if the Brewers are the better team, they just won't be able to make it out of that round because of randomness and weirdness that are the first rounds of the best of 5 playoffs.
And the Cubs.
So you're both half right, by the way. Matt, you're right. It will be in 4 games, and Jeremy, you're right. The Cubs will win.
Got it.
And let me tell you, the age-old expert who remembers his childhood, the Brewers have been cursed in the playoffs worse than the Cubs have, believe it or not. I can go all the way back to like 1982, I think, as a really young kid, watching them play the Cardinals in the World Series. They lost in 7 games. Riley Fingers got hurt, and Bruce Sutter closed it out. It was awful as a Cubs fan to have because the Brewers were in the American leagues. That was fine, right? I was a big fan of Yount and Molitor and as Corbin Thomas. I like the whole team, like Vukovic, the whole thing. Anyway, they've been cursed the whole time. And if the Brewers, with the best record in the National League, were to lose in their first round of the playoffs, and to lose to the Cubs, no doubt, I think it would just destroy the franchise. I mean, I don't think they'd even pay to fix the roof at that point. I mean, it would just be so devastating because, again, this has been such I don't want to say a miracle season, but such an unusual, unexpected. In fact, at the end of April, no one would have predicted this whatsoever, right? It's just been such a fairy tale season for them. And if it all comes down to losing to the big market team south of you that kind of treats you like their little brother to begin with, it would just be devastating. So the pressure on the Brewers is going to be immense. The Cubs can always say, I already won a series, and, we're not even trying, obviously. Look at our budget, So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Brewers, and I think the Cubs will play that to their advantage. And I think Counsell will best his mentor. I think there's some probably analogy to use to that. I just don't know who, but yeah, he's learned the lessons from Pat Murphy, and now he will use those lessons against Pat Murphy. I think it might be like a Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader thing. I'm not sure, but in any case, Cubs in 4.
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.